Welcome to The Gut Check, Nutrition and Gut Health for Active People, a podcast where we are talking functional nutrition for functional fitness and a functional you. Remember, if your gut is not functioning optimally, you are not functioning optimally. I am your host, registered dietitian and nutritionist, and OCR fan, Kate Klein. You can connect with me on Facebook at The Dublin Dietitian, or go to my website for additional resources, services, and the video recorded versions of these episodes at www.dublindietitian.com. That's DUBLINDIETITIAN. As a standard disclaimer, the information provided here is for educational purposes only. While I strive to provide accurate and helpful information to my listeners and viewers, I cannot take into account individualized circumstances. This is not a substitute for personalized nutrition, health, and medical advice from a health professional. If you are ready to get your personalized plan, you can go to dublindietitian.com and schedule a complimentary strategy session to get a game plan in place for you to hit your health and fitness goals. So let's get to it. In today's episode, I'm talking with Michelle Risser. So she's a mental health counselor. And we're going to talk about stress and burnout. And I think this is a really important topic in general. And I know it's one that's been touched on a couple times in the past and probably something you hear about a lot. But what I realized when I was talking with her in today's episode is just how exciting it is to see kind of this cohesive message starting to form in all sorts of different health professionals. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you've probably heard me talking with like Brianne and physical therapy and Dr. Moore with the chiropractic and alignment. And if you know my philosophy, like I teach the wheel of health, where it's nutrition, stress, sleep, hormones, and physicality, or like movement, alignment, posture, all that stuff. Because when I was in school, this was all so separate. Like things that talked about, reversing heart disease were poo-pooed as quackery, or telling people that they should meditate and do yoga and manage stress. They're like, no, that doesn't even matter. Like you get sick because of bad luck or genetics, maybe a little bit your food, because you're in school to be a dietitian. So we have to tell you that, eat a little bit better, but in moderation. So it's fine. Was kind of the message 20 years ago. And everybody sort of practiced in their own little bubbles. And that was actually why I got into what's called integrative medical nutrition, because I do believe in integrating all of that. It is the mindset and the stress. It is the fitness and the movement and the alignment and the posture. It is the breathing and the yoga. So really fun talk with Michelle today, because in her practice and in her work with mental health and burnout and recovery, she does the same thing. She talks about all kinds of different aspects of it. So I'm really excited that this is finally the way it seems like things are going, or maybe that's just my own echo chamber of people I'm connected with, but it's the message that I believe in, I have believed in for a long time, and I'm really excited to keep sharing with you. So listen in, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome back, guys. Today I have Michelle Risser on the show. Michelle's a licensed therapist in private practice, and she specializes in mental health and trauma. We actually met a couple years ago when I was working as a personal trainer and dietitian at Lifetime Fitness. And Michelle, I know we ended up talking a lot more about like mental health and stress than I think we ever did about actual nutrition and exercise, because that was so important and just so critical to all progress and all, again, that holistic lifestyle. So Michelle, thank you for joining today and helping share your experience and expertise on this topic. Very important. And at this point, very timely as well. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and your background and your business before we dive into the questions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Kate. It's great to be here. Like you said, I am a trauma therapist in private practice in Worthington, Ohio, and I specialize in maternal mental health and birth trauma. So I mostly work with moms. That's my full-time day job. Yeah. But I also have a passion project that I am currently developing and building, where I have a coaching and consulting business specifically focused on recognizing, preventing, and overcoming burnout, which is absolutely tied to chronic stress and what we're talking about here today, And I love to work with moms who work as helping professionals and also with businesses.
So getting into more workshop style thing then.
Absolutely. I do workshops, I do trainings, I do continuing education for mental health providers.
Well, you're like one-stop shop. You do it all, Michelle.
Maybe too much at times.
I was going to say, do we need to talk about your burnout? But
yes, we'll talk about that a different time.
So yeah, if you feel comfortable starting there, I mean, mental health and burnout has been a very important part of your own journey.
Yes.
So I would love to hear if you're comfortable sharing about that, some of the struggles you faced around allowing you to prioritize yourself and what you learned through your whole journey.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So 2-3 years ago, I was getting very burned out. My husband was traveling a lot for work, so I was kind of single parenting during the week. My practice was very busy. And I got to a point in my life where I felt like all I ever did was work, parent, and do chores. Like there was no fun in life. It just felt like a grind. I was starting to feel depressed. Just had no motivation, no energy. I would daydream about going to work at Target. And then what happened was in December of 2019, so right as COVID was coming into the picture, right. I actually went and talked to my doctor and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm drowning. And we had a conversation and she ran some tests and I started getting back to the gym and working out and I was starting to feel better when in January of 2020, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And my world came just crashing down. I felt like my life had been thrown in a blender. I had a very aggressive, scary kind of breast cancer called triple negative breast cancer. So I had to have chemo, surgery, radiation. So honestly, Kate, that was the turning point for me because I had no choice but to take care of myself.
I'm like, that's beyond the whole, like, oh, the world's telling you. It's like the world is 2x4ing you over the head.
Yes. The world dropped an anvil on my head. And I did still continue to work as a therapist. And I actually loved it. It was really good for me. It helped me get out of my own stuff and help others and stay productive. But I had to cut way back on my schedule. I was previously seeing like 24 clients a week and I had to cut down to about 10 clients a week. And I had to work around my chemo schedule and I was wearing a wig, lost all my hair, and I had no choice but to put myself first. It's like there's no more excuses at that point. And that's what I did. And I would take naps in between clients and drink a ton of water and just had to learn to say no a lot. And then just a couple months into that, COVID hit. So what a wild year.
Oh my gosh. Stress upon stress upon stress. Oh goodness. And then you had to go in for treatment, right? During all of that? Was that terrifying?
It was weird. My husband got to go with me for the first few treatments because I started chemo in February of 2020. And he got to go with me for a couple, but like a month later, it all got shut down and I had to do it all by myself. So the nurses were the saving grace though. I mean, oncology nurses are wonderful. And I would just sit there and chat with the nurses and they'd feed me Oreos. Not the healthiest. I know we're talking about gut health here, but you got to do what you got to do when you're on chemo.
You got to get by. Yes.
They brought me.
It's you are in control of the choice to eat the Oreo. The Oreo is not compelling you to eat it, then we're good.
So it's very much a choice and it was very much a chemo treat. Like that is, I could have that during chemo and it made it a little bit better.
Oh.
So anyway, so I just,
your status now.
So my status now is I'm cancer free. I just had a mammogram earlier this week and I'm healthy and I am very much, yes, thank you. I am very much in still that rebuilding process of trying to get healthy again, trying to drink more water, trying to eat healthier, finally making it back to the gym and getting back on track with my workouts. And still having to walk this talk of self-care.
So how is that going? I mean, you're still a full-time worker, you still have a full-time job while you're kind of have this side project while still being a wife and a mom. So
True.
how are you handling that differently than you did before?
I am seeing fewer clients a week than I was before. I'm not seeing 20, 24 clients. I'm seeing like 16 clients a week. And I have a couple days a week that I block off to work on my other projects.
Nice. So you've just made some non-negotiable kind of boundaries.
Exactly. Yes. I've definitely set strong boundaries around my time and my energy.
Nice. And we'll dive into that. But before we get too deep into, I guess, the hows to manage stress, I was hoping you could share, like, obviously you and I both know any health situation, cancer, IBS, chronic disease, very multifaceted. There's not one cause thing, it's part genetics, part environment, part nutrition, part sleep. But just in general, can you talk to us about the science of stress and what it's literally doing to the body and why this is important for people to not neglect?
Absolutely. I love this is one of my favorite things. I nerd out on this stuff. So it's all about the mind and the body. So what happens is we have to go back to our fight or flight, which is part of our HPA axis, which stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. Now, what happens is information comes into your brain. Maybe I'll just try to make this not quite so dense, but I think it's fun.
I feel like the majority of my audience, it's the way I am. I'm very much about educate the science. So let's go for it. And people, if you don't want to hear it, skip through a little bit.
And if there's a neuroscientist out there listening, I'm probably maybe not getting, all the nuance of this, but I hope I'll give you
and we'll dive in with the neuroscientist. Love to have you on the show.
So anyway, what happens is information comes into our brain through our senses, and it comes into the hypothalamus, which is a part of our brain that is going to determine whether this information is friend or foe. So whatever the things you see, or if you hear a sound, you smell something, hypothalamus is like the gatekeeper, and it says, oh, this is your puppy. And it'll shoot out a little dopamine. It'll trigger your endocrine system to shoot out a little dopamine, and you get a little good feeling. Yeah.
Happy, yeah.
But what if it hears a loud bang? It's going to say danger. And what it's going to do is it's going to trigger your amygdala to kick off this stress process of fight or flight. Your heart's going to beat faster. Your palms are going to get sweaty. Your body is going to start pumping out adrenaline and cortisol. And what this does is, if there's a tiger coming to eat you, that's fantastic. You don't want to be thinking, you're already out of there before you even realize what's going on. You're just like, zoom.
Those base instincts kick in.
Base instincts. Yeah. So hypothalamus decides there's a threat, sets that off, you're out of there. And then later you recover from that and you come back to your baseline. You come back to your nice parasympathetic nervous system where everything is calm and status quo. That's how it's supposed to work. But in today's
generations ago, perhaps it
did. This is how it is supposed to work. But what happens now in our modern world, especially during COVID, is we're bombarded constantly. You turn on the news and it's like doom and gloom and horror everywhere, or you pick up your phone and it's just one stressor after the next.
The phrase, I believe it was on the Colbert Report, or Late Night with Stephen Colbert, doom scrolling.
Yes.
You start, especially in 2020, where you're going through and everything on Facebook is people sharing and people wanting to voice, but it's also negative, but you just keep going. You get like sucked into it.
Yes, you totally get sucked in. And then you end up feeling like, oh my gosh, we're living in a hellscape nightmare.
Yeah.
So all of that is sending those messages to this automatic system in your body that's pumping out adrenaline and cortisol. Maybe not enough that you need to outrun a tiger, but it's constantly there. Like, and so, yes. So, Kate, that adrenaline and cortisol are meant to be very short term. Mm-hmm. They're not good long term. It can cause a lot of chronic health problems. And are you familiar with the Holmes and Ray scale?
No.
That's that. They made it back in the late 60s. And what it is it's a stress index that you go through, and you can find it easily online. Even though it's old, it's still very relevant. And it has you go through, did you get married? Did you get divorced? Did you buy a house? And it can be good things or bad things, but they're all stressors.
Yeah.
It could be a whole bunch of great things. You bought a beautiful house, got a new job, got married, and had a baby, but it still registers in your body as stress.
Big changes.
Exactly. So it's still pumping out all this cortisol. And with the scale, they've figured out the number where if you're over a certain number, then you are at much higher risk for health consequences.
That's really cool. I will Google that and add a link in the show notes. So
I'm a fan of it.
That sounds really cool. Yeah. Those big stresses.
And then to look out on top of that, all of that's still going on in our lives. And then let's add a pandemic too.
Yeah. And you've got the stress of social media, the stress of deadlines, work, kids, the pressure you and or society you feel like puts on you to look a certain way, act a certain way, cook a certain way, do a certain things, make a certain amount of money, live in a certain place. And it just adds and adds and adds. So when that is going on perpetually, that can then lead to health issues.
Exactly. So when it's going on perpetually without a chance to recover in between and come back to that healthy, calm baseline, that's when we're looking at chronic stress and all of those health things that can happen. And when we're in chronic stress, we're still on the treadmill. We're still trying to keep up. When we hit burnout is when it all shuts down. Burnout is like a collapse. Burnout is like, I'm done. I give up. You start to not care anymore. You start to feel apathetic and negative. So chronic stress is when you're still running on the treadmill. Burnout is when you just collapse beside the treadmill and say, screw it, I don't care anymore.
And I know, and maybe actually I'd be curious if you have experience with clientele with this, because as in my world, working with a lot of like the IBS and the GI, migraines and pain, there's definitely a correlation.
Oh, definitely.
You've had experience with clients like that and athletic performance and recovery and injury risk.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen people have really serious health consequences from stress, like with blood sugar and
erectile dysfunction is another common one that people don't put together. But when your cortisol,
that will make people listen and pay attention.
ED, guys, reduce your stress. But I actually learned about that originally way back when we were talking about blood sugars in school and diabetes, and how slightly but chronically elevated blood sugar, one of the many things it could do is lead to ED. But later learned the correlation when cortisol goes up, that also increases that blood sugar for the same reasons that you're talking about, because you now have to go into fight or flight. So your body wants to pump blood sugar in to help you fight or run instead of rest and digest. So it was very, very similar outcomes with that slightly elevated uncontrolled blood sugar as there is to slightly elevated uncontrolled stress. We see all that.
Yeah, it's just like a stew, isn't it? This blood sugar and cortisol and adrenaline and not good.
Hormones sometimes. And so you are now starting to branch off with your work a little bit more into the preventative side. Sounds like that's sort of becoming the passion area.
Recognize, prevent, and recover.
So you're hitting it all.
And recover. Yeah, we can catch this at any point in the process, and there are always things we can do. But the earlier you catch it, the easier it is to, just like blood sugar or anything else, the easier it is to get it under control if we catch it earlier.
Yeah, crawl back up the mountains, the slope, instead of get pulled back up off the cliff. So, let's take it that way then. What are things that people should be aware of to help recognize when it's happening, and what can they do to prevent? And then and how is that different from recovery?
Okay. So some ways that you can recognize that you're kind of nearing burnout and you need to make a change, if you start dreading your day, so say it's Sunday night and you are dreading work the next day, or just dreading whatever you've got going on, if you're extremely negative, cynical, apathetic, like nothing really has any meaning or purpose, it sounds a lot like depression. It really feels a lot like depression.
Like that.
It feels very collapsed. It's hard to muster up energy or motivation.
I get that word.
Yeah. So if you find yourself just going, ugh, I can't, like that sounds like burnout.
Yeah. I know when I was having my burnout phase, the only phrase I could think to tell people is like, I'm tired. And I don't mean I'm tired. I mean, I'm tired. And I didn't know how to describe it beyond that, but feeling collapsed is probably a really good way to say that. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're feeling collapsed, if you're feeling like you've just lost your passion for what you're doing, and a lot of times we do think of burnout in terms of the workplace, because that is often where it occurs, but it can occur anytime you're in a role where you have to be giving of your energy. So anybody, a mom or a parent, a dad, anybody in a helping profession who is constantly giving without recharging is going to be at risk of this.
Yeah.
We're seeing a ton of it in healthcare.
Oh my gosh.
And on the one end of the spectrum might be, oh man, I need to change my schedule a little because it's not really working for me. And then the opposite end is, do I need to leave the field? Do I need to make a gigantic switch?
A gigantic, scary switch. But long term, maybe the change that needs to happen. Are there other signs or things that you see routinely for people who are approaching or at burnout?
I would say that those are the big ones, that collapse, that if you're in a helping profession, there can be a loss of empathy, what they call compassion fatigue. When you are and when you're leading up to that, you can become so consumed with the stress, like you're ruminating about it, you're thinking about it all the time, you're having trouble sleeping. So all those kind of anxiety and stress symptoms come first. And then when you hit burnout, it's like you lose your ability to even care anymore. You lose your compassion.
Yeah.
You fried your compassion.
You're all out. You're burnt out of compassion too.
Yeah, exactly.
How would someone recognize the difference between like burnout and depression, or are they overlapped and similar starting points? There's lots of overlap. They can feel very, very similar as far as how it impacts your mood. Some of the telltale signs of having truly a clinical depression are when it affects your sleep and your appetite. Those are two of the big warning signs. Now, burnout could affect that too, but depression is a little different. It's like, people tend to go one way or the other. I can't stop overeating to try to comfort myself, or I just have no appetite at all. It's usually a pretty extreme change from the norm. And then with depression, what I see a lot is people just can't seem to get enough sleep. They could sleep 14 hours a day and still be tired. Wow. Yeah.
Escape. Yeah. So if it's really impacting you physically, or if you're having any thoughts of harming yourself, or even just of death in general, if you're having recurrent intrusive thoughts about death, those are signs of depression, and it's really important to ask for help.
Yeah. So either way, if your life is being impacted by sleep, energy, thought, regardless of the label we want to, diagnose it with, it's worth going, hey, this isn't normal. This doesn't have to be this way.
Exactly.
Let's find something to do. So what kind of things do you recommend then for people? Like what techniques do you use, or what can people do if they're recognizing that they're going down this slope to try to slow that progression or stop it and halt it and reverse it?
Yeah. So what I am really big on, my favorite thing is building little micro self-care strategies into your day so that you're not waiting for that Caribbean vacation to start to feel better. Like you can do it as you go. So it's very simple things. Like I like to start every day with a 2-minute meditation. And what I do is I just set a timer. I like the Insight timer, which is a free app.
Okay.
And for the first minute, there's a way you can set an interval bell at 1 minute. So how I start is for 1 minute, I just focus on my breath. And then when I hear that bell, I focus on the sense of sound. So I'm doing one practice that's inward and then one that's outward.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. And then as the 2 minutes really starts to fly by, you can add more time to it.
Okay. So how long do you just do 2 minutes currently?
I think the longest I ever got was up to 10 minutes. That's a long time for me. But I have a friend who has devoted his life to meditation, and he can sit for an hour or more. But for me, 2 minutes works because I'm busy and it's the morning and I have a kid and we need to get her to school and work. And 2 minutes I can commit to. Like there's not much that's going to get in the way of 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think of it as a micro strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I know you work on as well with people is just make sure that first thing in the morning, you fill that water bottle and you have it with you all day long. So you're just sipping water all day.
Self-care, little reminder every time you take a sip, speaking.
Exactly. Yep. Got mine right here. My big old honking water bottle.
Mine here.
What else? I really like, there are some yoga poses that I really like. If you have a private office or just a place, if you're home, I like legs up the wall. So just scoot your butt over to the wall, put your legs up. It can really help.
Just revitalize.
Yes. Revitalize, rest. Or even just shavasana, corpse pose, just lay on the floor and breathe for a few minutes. All those old school things that they used to tell us, 20 years ago when they would say, park further away and walk. I think that stuff's great. Take the stairs, for me, I see back to back to back clients all day. So in between, I might just do a couple squats, or I might just stand up and stretch, move my body. It doesn't have to be a workout, just get a little movement.
Nice. So even still with all this, though, a lot of people often think of like mental health as purely in the mind, like thoughts and affirmations. I love that you're like everything, incorporating kind of that holistic thing, the breathing, the affirmations are a part of it. I assume, I guess you didn't say that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we've talked about that. But also the water, the movement, the little mini breaks, because I do think a lot of people, in addition to there being this mindset that I think it is starting to shift, but the idea that self-care is selfish because how dare you take away time from your job, family, friends, whatever.
Right.
And that shifted, but it became about that Caribbean vacation or a manicure or an hour-long massage. So I love that you are incorporating very doable, very tangible little things. I like that idea of the micros.
Absolutely. That is how I think of it, is you incorporate self-care into your life. Self-care is something that's always happening. And, it's not only those basic things that we talked about, but it's setting boundaries. It's saying no to things that you don't have the time or energy or desire to do. It's watching your inputs. What are you bringing in as far as watching media or movies or social media, or even the people you're talking to? Your whole entire life is self-care. Everything either drains you or energizes you. Some things are neutral, but you want to stay away from those things that drain your energy. Yeah.
And recognizing that, I think, is hard for some people. And that takes a very honest look at your life sometime to go, is this relationship, is this activity, is this priority, is this truly worth keeping around? And sometimes it is, but still asking that about everything, I think, is hard for people to do a lot of times.
It is hard.
Yeah. So do you have any examples where you've seen people just sort of spiraling down with burnout and then still denying them self-care?
Oh, definitely. Especially moms. Moms are, because there's this thing that happens with moms that's just cruel, I think. It's like cruel and unusual punishment. Oh. Moms are exhausted, and especially moms with young kids. I feel like this is who I'm thinking about. They're just absolutely exhausted, can barely find any time for themselves, sleep deprived, and they have this mom guilt that kicks in and tells them that they're bad if they take care of themselves. So they just burn themselves into the ground.
What would you recommend to them? Like how you, because I'm sure you've had some people who come to you with that struggle. What Definitely. Is it that helps them turn around? What have you seen them do to be able to kind of go, okay, this is not only okay, but good for me and therefore my family?
Yeah. So there's one little metaphor that I like to use that people seem to really connect with, which is, okay, so you have your phone, right? Your phone does a lot for you, but you have to plug in your phone. Are you mad at your phone because it needed charged?
Oh,
you plug it in so that it can do what it needs to do. Same with you. You have to plug in your batteries too. You are not an endless supply of energy. And sometimes people will go, oh, okay, I get it now. So like if I go to coffee with a friend, that's plugging in my phone so that I can then function and be an even better mom or, whatever. Yes, exactly.
I like that analogy. And I guess, do you have stories of like some of your favorite stories about clients taking control of this and how it affected their life? And because what I see usually is it's hard for them to take care of themselves at first, but once they do, they bring a better version of themselves and have more energy. Or I've heard clients say, I feel more present with my family. What are some of your kind of favorite stories?
Absolutely. So my favorite stories are the moms who, it feels like now in our culture right now, at least in the US, there is this thing where parents feel like they have to give their kids their attention 24/7. And if you don't, you're a bad mom. So, I'm thinking of a mom who is in that boat. She feels like she has to be just doting on her kids 24/7. If she's not on the floor playing with them, then she's cleaning or cooking and when that light bulb goes off, that she's like, oh my gosh, so it's okay if my kid plays by themselves for 20 minutes? And I could actually just sit there and drink coffee. And I'm like, yes. And once they get that that's not only okay, but it's actually better for their kids, that's when the light bulb goes off. When it's like, oh, I'm actually a better mom. So I have lots of those examples.
Yeah. So what are some of the things they come back saying? So I guess my motivation for asking this question is listeners who are in that boat of struggling to want to invest time, money, energy, something into themselves. What are you seeing your clients learn that maybe would kind of help other people go, okay, that would be worth it. That would help make that shift.
Yes, that it's actually not selfish to take care of myself, that actually makes me a better mom, therapist, nurse, teacher, whatever, fill in the blank. That when I take care of myself, I'm doing that really for my whole family. Not just for me, because then I can show up and I can be present.
And overcome that, what did you call it? The emotional fatigue? The caregiver fatigue.
Oh yeah, the compassion fatigue.
The compassion fatigue. Yeah, you can bring that back.
I can show up as my best self, and when that light bulb finally goes off, and it's not just lip service, but they're like, no, I get it. I'm actually a better mom if I take care of myself. And I've even had clients who will go to a hotel by themselves for a weekend, or go on a trip with girlfriends because they really believe and understand that this is true, that we have to fill our own cup. That is not just a cliche.
Yeah. It makes sense.
One of the things I always think about, there are so many cliches like that. And one of them is you have to put your oxygen mask on first. I'm sure you've heard that one, right?
I heard that one, yes.
If you're on a plane and the oxygen mask drops
in someone's head, like people, it just like poop.
Absolutely. And we all know we have to put our oxygen mask on first. We know this. We've been hearing this. I had a realization one day where I was like, okay, wait a second. Imagine a plane full of moms and little ones. Those moms are putting that mask on their kid. I'm sorry. It's instinct. Those moms are going to put that mask on their kid and then they're going to pass out. So we've got to change the narrative so that taking care of ourselves is instinctual.
And just add it in little micro bits in there.
Yes. Even just the simplest thing, like keeping your water bottle full. I feel like that's a commitment to taking care of yourself.
Yeah. So now I imagine there's a point, like a lot of these sound like preventative tips or some of the starting tips once someone's hit that burnout. Are there deeper things that you have to get into? Like what kind of really is the work that you do? I'm not as familiar with how that all works. So what kind of things do you take people through? What kind of programming do you use with people?
Sure. Well, there's a couple different things. And as you know, I'm a therapist and a coach. Yeah. So on the therapy side, this would show up in a lot of, childhood trauma and boundaries and codependency and depression and anxiety and all those kind of things that are underneath it. But when we're just talking about someone who is overall mentally and emotionally healthy, and they're just struggling with chronic stress, headed towards burnout, I would coach them through having this, micro strategy practice of doing these things every single day until they become a habit. And I would have them look at the drains on their energy, the things that fill their cup versus the things that drain them, and starting to eliminate some of those things. And really looking to, another thing I love to help people through is working on the obstacles that pop up. So like, for example, in your work, in general, I don't like the word excuses. I much prefer obstacles or barriers. So say there's someone who says they want to lose weight or go to the gym, but they keep not going. I would look at, okay, let's figure out why. If they say if they're too busy, I would say, okay, let's look at your schedule. Like, let's solve this. If that's your barrier is you are too busy to get to the gym, then that means other things are taking your time and energy other than your own self-care. So let's sit down with that schedule and hash it out and figure it out. Like for me lately, since I've recommitted to going to the gym, I've been going to the gym at 8:30 at night. That is not ideal, but you have to work around your own barriers and obstacles in life. If you're too tired, why? If you're not present or you're checked out, or let's figure out why. So that's a big part of what my work is helping to get to what's under it. I always see those as very real things.
Yeah. And it's so just kind of peeling back the layers, get down to the why, like what is that actual barrier?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then you bring people to a healthier, energized, more vibrant version of themselves through self-care.
Exactly. That's my goal. I like to think of it as I help people optimize their self-care. So make it really, really work for them. And that's everything from the basics, like we're talking about. It's the boundaries and the, protecting your energy and your time. But then it's also making sure that you have time to have fun and you have time to be creative and you have time and energy to do things that make life interesting. Yes.
I heard it put one way, like we always think, there's the fight or flight and then there's the rest and recovery. They're like, and she said, since the doctor I was talking to, she goes, I like to call it rest and recharge. And they're two sides of the same coin, but we forget them. A lot of people think, I'll just rest, like I'll watch TV or I'll take a bath. But are you getting re-energized? Are you getting recharged and reignited with passion for life? Like you have to have both of those.
Yeah.
That was a really cool way to sort of divide that nuance in the self-care world.
Yeah. Like recharge sounds a little more active.
Yeah. Like seeing your friends versus, just taking a nap. They're both important, but they kind of do different things for our mood and our psyche and everything.
That's so true. And it's when you are on limited time, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. Like I know I've been in a situation where I'm like, do I need to watch Netflix and have a cup of tea? Or do I need to go to the gym? And I really don't know, because they both sound equally important at that moment.
And you have to be mindful and listen to yourself and see what your body is saying.
Right.
And then honor that one way or the other. So, Michelle, do you have 3 favorite books or podcasts or resources that you would recommend to people who are kind of dealing with this?
I love the good old classic Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. A lot of people may not realize that codependency plays a part, but if you are constantly feeling stressed and drained, especially if you're a person who is always focused on others' needs, you might want to look at if that could be an issue for you. So I love that book, Codependent No More.
Codependent No More.
Yeah, actually anything by Melody Beattie. She has wonderful little daily readers.
Okay.
Like daily affirmation books and things like that. I personally love to watch just feel good TV. I love to watch Queer Eye or Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, or like my husband and I now are watching The Good Place. So I just love to watch a good old feel good kind of show for my soul.
I like that.
Yeah. And then I really like Dax Shepard's podcast. Do you listen to Dax?
The name is familiar.
Yeah, it's called Armchair Expert. But and he interviews celebrities and things, but he is in recovery himself, and he talks a lot about recovery and mental health. And he really digs deeper into, even though on the surface it may feel kind of like a celebrity, interview, he really digs deeper into personal development, self-improvement, that kind of thing. So I enjoy that. That might be kind of not quite what you were expecting, but
hey, I think that it's all about health and wellness. So that's good. Yeah. And then you mentioned the app, the Insight Timer.
Yes. Love the Insight Timer. I recommend everybody grab it. It has free, it is totally free, but you can upgrade, but it has just nice chime sounds and a nice timer, but it also has guided meditations for just about anything you could think of. So right now we could get on there and look up burnout and we would find guided meditations.
Oh, so it's got all sorts of very tailored topics.
Yes.
Very cool. And now, and you said that you have a guided meditation that you would like to have the link shared with the audience, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
I have a little bit about it, guys.
Well, I have a few different ones. I have a few different ones that I have recorded. I kind of started doing that as a little hobby, but there's one I really love called the Mountain Meditation. So I think I will link that one. It's about 10 minutes long. This is a classic meditation that was originally developed by John Kabat-Zinn, who is the person who kind of brought mindfulness to the mainstream. So yeah, I'll link that.
That sounds great.
Meditation. And I would love to hear how people like it.
Yeah. So how can people reach out to you if they want to connect with you, ask for more, maybe check out some of the other guided meditations you have, or connect with you about your kind of your workshops and your corporate wellness or your private practice work?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to find me is at mrisser.com, MRISSER.com, or they can email me, michelle@mrisser.com. And my Instagram is Hey Therapist Mom.
Oh, I like that. Hey Therapist Mom.
Yep.
Cool. So I guess to sort of, before we wrap up too much, just sort of summarizing the idea that stress has its place and it has its purpose, but when we let it get uncontrolled and it goes long-term, it can be that snowball rolling downhill and pick up more and more health problems and struggles. So it's good to recognize it, prevent it if possible, and recover if you've kind of gone over the edge a little bit. And it doesn't have to be selfish, and it doesn't have to be big, grandiose gestures. It can be some of those little micro self-care act as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you get a trip to the Caribbean, fabulous. But in the meantime, drink your water, put your legs up the wall.
I love it. So anything else you would like to add here?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. I do have a question for you, actually, though, Kate. If you could tell me just on a very basic level how this affects gut health. How does stress and cortisol? I know that's probably a huge question.
Goodness, I was like, I have.
Can you give me the Cliff Notes version
on that one? Well, I mean, in the shortest, the most direct and not obvious, but like understandable, usually people get is, again, if we think of that, the sympathetic nervous system as the fight or flight getting triggered up here, and the parasympathetic being not only rest and recovery, but it's rest and digest. So when we cannot calm down, that slows GI movement, motility, which can add to problems. It affects the stomach acid, which can add to heartburn. And a lot of people understand that in like a very common place. You're nervous, you're stressed, like you feel that tightness in your stomach. You sometimes lose your appetite if it's like a very acute thing, like you're about to give do a public talk or give a presentation or go on stage. So if you imagine that like long-term having that stressful tightness. So with the GI, we see a lot of dysmotility, whether it's stopping and we're getting constipation, or whether it's churning too fast and we're getting diarrhea or gas. It can screw up the stomach acid levels, and that can lead to then like the heartburn or the indigestion problems there. And then also stress is inflammatory in the body. So that manifests differently in different people. I've worked with people with migraine pains from it, body aches and pains and stiffness. There's a lot of tight breathing that goes up here instead of breathing deep into the ribs. So that keeps everything tense and adds to headaches and stiffness and achiness too. So those are some of the direct ways, very quick.
Oh, that makes total sense. Yeah. And I would imagine if you have diarrhea, constipation, your gut bacteria are going to be all messed up.
Yeah. And
which you can't crashes your whole metabolism. So if you're trying to lose weight, stress is not what you want.
Oh yeah. Cortisol moves fat. It actually can shift the location of the fat from wherever on your body to that little pouch below the belly button. So we call it the stress belly. But I have a cat visiting. But yeah, a lot of people who are like, I just can't lose weight. I can't lose weight under the belly. It's like, it's probably inflammation and stress of some kind, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, hormonal. But yeah, and when your motility's off, if things are moving too fast, you can't absorb what you need. So then we get fatigue, we get problems with cellular integrity. If it's not moving fast enough and you're getting constipated, one of the things, and this was fascinating when I learned this a while back, but your hormones are like an assembly line. And once they're used, there's byproducts that you need to excrete. And if you can't excrete, that tells your body, hey, there's a bottleneck. I'm going to stop making so much of that thyroid hormone or that sex hormone. So we see hormone imbalances because of that constipation bottleneck. So,
my goodness.
So yeah. Very, very cool to me. Very fascinating.
It is fascinating. And like you mentioned earlier, the mind and the body are absolutely one thing. We cannot separate them. And the spirit too. Yeah. When we talked about finding things that inspire us, or, something to look forward to, something artistic, it's so important.
Yeah. It's that mind-body connection is so underrated, I think.
It sure is.
But we're seeing it.
So one more thing about the whole chronic stress burnout, in relation to the body is, so if you think about it, when you're stressed, think about what your body does. You're like this, you're all clenched. And that sends a message to your brain that says, we're not safe.
Yeah.
So your brain then says, there's a tiger in the room. I better pump out even more cortisol. And then your body goes, we're even more not safe. So you're just in this vicious, horrible loop.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like this subconscious body language that says, I don't deserve to be here taking up space. I'm going to shrink into myself. And I know there's
and a lot of times I will say, start with the body, because we can't think our way out of that. Our prefrontal, which is our thinking brain, is offline when we're in that fight or flight. So start with your body. Get your shoulders down, loosen your jaw, open your hands, take a slow breath.
Power pose.
Yes. And then your body can say, brain, we're okay.
Yeah.
And brain can go, all right, I'll slow down the cortisol a little bit.
So anyone listening, just stand up for a minute, take up space, fix the posture, and 2 deep breaths. Not even 2 full minutes, just 2 breaths.
Yes.
Good.
It'll make a huge difference.
Yes. And be sure to follow Michelle on Instagram. She does some great little reels with breathing and tips and trivia and all sorts of good stuff. So, hey, therapist.
Thank you.
Mom. Yeah. And I'll put her contact information in the show notes. So really good stuff, Michelle. Thank you so much for being on and sharing your passion with all of this.
You are so welcome. It's always wonderful to talk to you.
Until next time.
Sounds good.
So that was a fun little twist on the end where she got to ask me on my world how this all integrates. So one of the things I will point out, and I just want to offer up as well, is that we can test this. So absolutely take care, do the things that you need. But if you feel like that's not working, like the lifestyle alterations aren't working, there are some times, and this is kind of the world I work in, where like I'm doing everything right and it's not working. So if you feel like that's you, there are things that we can do, and I'll link below as well, a 6-point cortisol test. So we can actually measure how much cortisol is pumping through your body at various intervals throughout the day. And there's a special curve, or a particular curve that it should be at. We need a little cortisol in the morning to kick our butts, get us up, get us moving. And it should taper down and kind of taper off by the time we go to bed, so that we're relaxed and we can sleep. So that video goes over all the things that we might see where it might not happen or things are going wrong. Because sometimes, like I mentioned in the recording, stress absolutely can be mental and emotional and all of that, but sometimes it is more related to, like, you had a big surgery, you had a big trauma, you had, I've had women who went through delivery that was really, really traumatic and just bad. And you can, like Michelle said, only do so much with just the mind. You have to start with the body. So sometimes we need to get a little more therapeutic with that. So if you think that you need to go a second level deeper, get into some lab work and therapeutic nutrition and supplementation to come back to that nice, healthy center, reach out. Happy to talk about that more. So take care, smile big, breathe deeply, and I'll talk to you later.